He's got the potential, João Pedro. He's one of the best in the Premier League.
João Pedro's onside here. Can he make the win safe? Yes, he can.
How good is João Pedro actually?
I do think that João Pedro is going to get more goal-scoring opportunities. I'm going to take João Pedro.
Because after just one season at Chelsea, the question is no longer whether he belongs in the Premier League, it's how high he can climb. He arrived from Brighton with plenty of expectations, then he scored in the Club World Cup. He scored against Tottenham, he scored in the Champions League, he scored 20 goals in his first full season. And Chelsea supporters didn't just notice, they voted him their player of the season with more than 60% of the votes. Now comes the frightening part. João Pedro has just finished pre-season with 7 goals, including 2 against Real Sociedad. Morgan Rogers scored in that same game, and suddenly, Chelsea's attack looks completely different. Because João Pedro isn't simply becoming a better striker, he is becoming the kind of forward who can make everyone around him more dangerous. Palmer can find him, Rogers can run beyond him, Estêvão can attack from the opposite side, Welbeck can provide experience and another physical option, and João Pedro can connect all of it. So, are we watching a good Chelsea striker? Or are we watching the beginning of a forward who could dominate the Premier League? When Chelsea signed João Pedro from Brighton in 2025, the expectation wasn't necessarily that he would immediately become the face of the attack. Chelsea had options. They had young forwards. They had Cole Palmer. They had players arriving with enormous reputations. João Pedro was talented, but talented and ready are two different things. Then the Club World Cup happened. He scored twice against his former club Fluminense in the semi-final. Then he scored again in the final against Paris Saint-Germain. And suddenly Chelsea had a problem they probably didn't mind having. They had another attacker demanding to start. His Premier League breakthrough came quickly. He scored against West Ham, then Fulham. Then in November he scored the only goal against Tottenham, and slowly the role changed. João Pedro stopped looking like a player trying to establish himself. He started looking like someone Chelsea could build around. By the end of the season, the numbers were difficult to ignore. 20 goals, 6 assists in all competitions, 15 Premier League goals and 5 Premier League assists. He became only the 6th Chelsea player to record at least 20 Premier League goal involvements in his first season, joining names such as Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank, Eden Hazard, Diego Costa and Cole Palmer. But the numbers don't explain why supporters became so excited about him. Because João Pedro wasn't scoring the same goal every week. He could finish inside the box, he could arrive late, he could combine, he could shoot from distance. And then against Nottingham Forest, he produced one of the goals of Chelsea's season. A chest control, a split-second adjustment and an outrageous overhead kick. Chelsea supporters gave it 68% of the vote to win their Goal of the Month award. That goal was spectacular, but it also represented something bigger. João Pedro wasn't just surviving at Chelsea, he was starting to look comfortable. And then, pre-season arrived. This is where the story gets interesting. Because pre-season is normally where players build fitness. João Pedro decided to build hype instead. 7 goals. That was his total heading into Chelsea's final pre-season match. Then Real Sociedad arrived at Stamford Bridge. Morgan Rogers opened the scoring, Palmer was involved, Chelsea looked dangerous, and then João Pedro took over. A header from a Reece James cross, then another finish later in the game after Malo Gusto found him. 2 goals, Chelsea won 3-1, and João Pedro finished pre-season with 7 goals. That matters, because this isn't the same João Pedro who arrived 12 months ago. He knows his teammates, he knows where the spaces appear, and most importantly, he knows that Chelsea trust him. even people around the club have started talking differently about his game. Callum McFarlane, who works with the first team, described João Pedro as a top talent and highlighted how his skill set allows him to operate in different attacking roles. And that's the detail that makes the new season so fascinating, because João Pedro doesn't have to remain a traditional number 9. He can drop, he can drift, he can connect midfield to attack, he can pull a centre-back away, and then suddenly he can appear inside the box. That flexibility is exactly what could make Chelsea's attack difficult to read. But there is an even bigger reason to be excited. Look at who is around him.
Imagine trying to defend Chelsea next season. You see João Pedro standing centrally, so your centre-back stays close. Then João drops. Do you follow him? If you do, the space behind you opens, and that's where Morgan Rogers can attack. Rogers isn't waiting for defenders to make the game easy for him. He wants to carry the ball, run through gaps, attack defenders directly. And in Chelsea's final pre-season match against Real Sociedad, he was the player who opened the scoring. Then there is Cole Palmer. Palmer doesn't need an introduction, but he does need space, and João Pedro can help create it. If João drops between the lines, a centre-back has a decision: follow him or stay with Palmer. Either decision creates another problem. And then there is Estêvão. The teenager already showed flashes of what he can become during his first season, finishing with 8 goals for Chelsea and producing one of the club's most memorable individual moments. Now put all 3 together: Palmer's vision, Rogers' ball carrying, Estêvão's unpredictability, and João Pedro's movement and finishing. Suddenly, Chelsea don't have one attacking threat, they have different threats arriving from different directions. And that's before considering Danny Welbeck, because Welbeck offers something completely different: experience, physicality, movement, and the ability to give Chelsea another type of forward when the game demands it. That's what makes João Pedro so important. He doesn't have to do everything himself, he just has to connect the pieces. And if Xabi Alonso gets that balance right, Chelsea could become extremely difficult to defend. But there is one question that still needs answering. Was last season actually João Pedro's ceiling, or was it just the beginning? There is a temptation to watch 7 pre-season goals and immediately declare João Pedro world-class. That's probably too early. Pre-season is not the Premier League, and 7 goals against friendly opposition don't guarantee another 20-goal season. But that's not really the point. The point is that João Pedro has already shown he can produce when the football becomes serious. He scored 20 goals in competitive football last season. He produced in the Champions League. He scored against Tottenham. He scored a hat-trick at Aston Villa. He scored a brace against Napoli. And he finished his full Chelsea campaign as the supporters' player of the season. So the question isn't whether he has the evidence, he does. The question is what happens when that player gets even better. Because João Pedro is only 24, and Chelsea are giving him an environment where he doesn't have to carry the entire attack. Palmer can create, Rogers can carry, Estêvão can stretch the defence, Welbeck can rotate in, and João Pedro can move between the spaces they create. That is potentially his biggest weapon: uncertainty. Defenders hate forwards they can't easily predict. If João Pedro stays high, you can defend him. If he constantly drops, you can track him. But if he does both at the right moment, you have a problem. And this is where I think the hype around João Pedro becomes justified. Not because 7 pre-season goals suddenly make him one of the best forwards in Europe, but because we're beginning to see a player whose skill set fits the players around him. That is much more important. A great striker can score goals. A great forward can make the entire attack better. And João Pedro may be moving towards the second category.
So, how good is João Pedro actually? The honest answer is that we still don't know his ceiling, but we know where the floor has already moved. 20 goals in his first full season. Chelsea's player of the season, 7 goals in pre-season, and now a new Chelsea attack built around Palmer, Rogers, Estêvão, and João Pedro himself. The Premier League is about to find out whether last season was João Pedro's breakthrough,
or simply the warning? Because if this version of João Pedro gets even better, Chelsea may not just have found their striker, they may have found the player who makes everyone around him dangerous.